I think we all probably know this, but Nintendo is not the only studio that has classic IPs that are just remarkably fantastic. Yeah, I feel like I talk a lot about like Nintendo and Sega classic IPs, or I have as of late. It's maybe easier to forget about the classic Xbox and PlayStation IPs that have gone dormant for many years now. And specifically focusing on PlayStation, the three that come to mind right away, for me, are Sly Cooper, Jak and Daxter, and Ratchet & Clank. Now, the latter two, I hate to admit it, but I've never played a single game in the series, which sucks because I love platformers. But I have extremely fond memories growing up of playing Sly 1 and 2. I mean, it's just a great series. Now, the last Sly game was 2013, the last Jak and Daxter game was 2009, and surprisingly, actually, the last Ratchet & Clank game was 3 years ago in 2021, and it does look like that one, it was called Rift Apart, that did very well. Now, maybe it was because of that doing really well, or maybe it had something to do with Astrobot doing phenomenally well this year, or maybe it was some other outside factor that finally convinced PlayStation to maybe dig into some of these old IPs. Yeah, dust off the cobwebs off of some of these series that people really want a new game for, because it does sound like they are planning on doing just that, though we don't know exactly which IPs they do want to revive. So where did I get this information? Well, this actually just came out today. So if you didn't know, Sony Interactive Entertainment is actually two-manning it with their CEOs right now. They have two CEOs, believe it or not. Now, one of these CEOs is Hermen Hulst, and he was just interviewed by Famitsu, which you have very likely heard of in the past. This is just a line of Japanese video game magazines. Now, this interview was published today, December 28th, and a lot was revealed in this interview. Now, the big thing to me that stood out is, yeah, this intended revival of old PlayStation IPs. So he said, quote, "The various IPs we own are an important asset to PlayStation, and as part of our efforts to strengthen our portfolio, we continually explore opportunities to leverage our past IPs while also developing new franchises." I am glad to hear this, especially because sometimes we can hear from big video game executives that they're trying to turn a new leaf or just start over, don't look in the rearview mirror, you know, that sort of thing, but it is very obvious that PlayStation, while they are looking ahead, they also very much know that people do love their old IPs. Now, I really wish we got something more specific in this interview than just that, but nonetheless, it is great to hear him say those things. Now, the other thing that did stand out to me is his comments on third-party studios. Essentially, he said that they just love collaborating with these third-party studios, and that it benefits them and it helps them to explore just a huge variety of games that a lot of people enjoy playing. Now, with this and with his comment on IPs, I do have to wonder if maybe PlayStation is looking into outsourcing some third-party studios to make, you know, the next game, the next installment in these series. You know, like you look at Xbox, for example, they recently signed a deal with Toys for Bob, where, you know, Toys for Bob, they just actually went independent, so they are now considered a third party. They're not owned by Activision. But like a month or two after that happened, they did sign a deal with Xbox, basically saying that Xbox will publish their next game, and it is very heavily theorized that this game will actually be an Xbox game. Like, it will be an Xbox IP. People are thinking maybe Spyro the Dragon or Crash or maybe even Banjo. So it's very possible that with these comments, both about third-party studios and IPs, that maybe PlayStation is planning on doing just that. And, you know, looking into it, it is very surprising at, you know, how many IPs by PlayStation that I've never even heard of that are pretty dormant that people really want another installment on. Like, I'm looking at these comments on the Game Rant article, and people are saying, like, Medal of Honor. I do remember that game series. I had no idea it was a Sony exclusive. And people are saying, like, Soul River and Killzone and Resistance. I've never heard of these series. And I'm sure there are others as well that I have just never heard of that people do want another installment in. It might show how kind of out of the loop I am, and maybe how out of touch I am, but regardless, if people want it, if there is enough of an outcry, then maybe, hopefully, Sony will deliver. Sometimes it's maybe easy to think that some game studios have abandoned their old IPs, but in the case of PlayStation, with these comments that were published in an interview today, it's very evident that that is not the case with them.